Hi, it's Al here from DMR, and today I'm going to show you how to service your V8 Classic pedals. Signs that you need to service your V8 Classics are if the bearing smoothness has degraded over time, or if there's any play between the axle and the pedal body. If it's just they're not feeling as smooth as they used to, then you can re-grease the pedal using the grease port here, little grub screw. You do get an Allen key in the box and some grease as well. You might need a bit extra, but you can pump some fresh grease through the grease port. The old grease will come out by the axle and the pedal body, and everything should be smooth and good to run again. If there is play, then you will need a service kit and you will need to strip them down. You're going to need a few tools to do the job. Here's a rundown of what you're going to need. First of all, you're going to need a rag or some cleaning cloths. You're going to need a pick or a small flat-bladed screwdriver. You need a 2mm Allen key. You need some grease, preferably in a grease gun. A DMR V8 Classic pedal tool. A 12mm deep socket and driver. It's important that the socket will insert through your DMR tool. A 19mm spanner. Your DMR V8 Classic service kit. And to hold the pedal still, you're going to need either a 6mm Allen key or a pedal spanner, or preferably a small vise. That's it. Right, so let's get started. We've mounted the pedal in a vise just to make this a little bit easier, but it's not 100% required. If you do mount it in a vise, make sure you clamp only the flats of the axle, because otherwise you could damage the threads of the pedal. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the end cap, so take a pick or a small flat-bladed screwdriver. Careful not to stab yourself here. And just flick that cap out. Once that's been removed, you'll be able to see inside the pedal. I'll show you here, close up. Now you can see inside we've got a lock nut and a cone. So what we've got in this pedal is a cup and cone bearing assembly. So you've got bearings at either end of the axle, and that's adjustable. So when it's adjusted correctly, then there won't be any play and the pedal will feel nice and smooth. So this is where we're going to need our DMR V8 tool. So this mounts into the pedal like so, and it holds the cone part of the bearing assembly with a 19mm spanner, whilst you undo the lock nut with your 12mm socket. Once you've undone the lock nut, we can spin off the cone of the bearing assembly. And that'll expose the bearings that are inside the pedal. At this point, the axle is free to come out of the pedal body. So as you remove it, you might get bearings going everywhere. Doesn't really matter too much if you do. They're just held in with grease at the moment, but we're going to replace those as part of the service. There is a small O-ring that sits inside the pedal body. Keep hold of that, and also keep hold of your lock nut and your cone. You can also remove this bearing shield. It has an O-ring inside of it. Keeps the dirt out of the pedals. You do get a new one in your service kit, so you don't need to keep hold of that. Now we're ready to pick out the old bearings and give the pedal a good clean. With the pedal body and the axle clean, we also need to clean the lock nut and this cone, and also the O-ring from the end of the pedal body that we're going to reuse. Just check all of the bearing surfaces and make sure that there's no damage. If there's any serious damage on these, then your pedal's going to feel rough no matter how much grease you pump in there or how fresh the bearings are. So have a good look. If everything's looking nice and smooth, there on the two bearing surfaces inside the pedal body and also on the axle itself, and you're good to go. The first part of putting your pedal back together is putting the loose ball bearings into the pedal body. It's a bit fiddly, but if you take your time, you'll be all right. So to get the bearings to stay where you want them, we're going to put a bead of grease around the bearing surface in the pedal body. So obviously we've got one at either end. This is where the grease gun really pays dividends. Make sure you grease all the way around and try not to get any stray grease in the hole. It'll help when it comes to assembly. So in your service kit, it comes with 52 bearings, so that's 13 per end over the two pedals. So just start popping those into place. The grease will hold them exactly where you want them. With the bearings in place, next we're going to pop our small O-ring into the inboard end of the pedal body. Make sure that's resting against its seat, and then we're ready to insert the axle. When you fit the axle, be super careful not to dislodge the bearings. Go, that's nicely in place, and then we can start to fit the cone and the lock nut. Fit the cone by hand initially. Try to hold the axle in place so it doesn't disturb any of the bearings that you've carefully put in there. I'm just using my finger to hold the cone whilst I turn the axle to screw it down where it should be. Once you've got it roughly in place, use your DMR V8 tool just to snug that cone down. Don't tighten it because that will crush the bearings. You're just preloading the bearings with that cone, so just nip it up with a finger and thumb, and we'll do the fine adjustment in a moment. When you screw that cone into position, what we're aiming for is a nice smooth spinning pedal with no play. So it's really easy if you've got your pedal mounted in a vise because you can rock the pedal body. There shouldn't be any movement at all, but it should still spin nice and smoothly. Once you've done that, then you know that you've got your setup spot on. If there's play, then you need to tighten the cone, and if it feels a bit graunchy, then you need to back it off slightly. So we're in the right ballpark here. Like I say, it's much easier with a vise. If you don't have a vise, then you can hold the pedal with either a pedal spanner or a 6mm Allen key. So with the cone roughly adjusted, it's well in the ballpark, we're going to get our lock nut and we're going to spin that down onto the axle. Start it off by hand so you don't cross thread it. Then use your socket just to nip it down so it's snug down onto the cone. With everything in place and the pedal feeling good, next thing that we need to do is tighten up that lock nut and cone together so it doesn't come loose. So you need your V8 tool, fit that onto the cone, hold it still with your 19mm spanner, and then take your 12mm deep socket and tighten the two together. Remove those, have another feel of the pedal. If there's any play, there is a tiny tick off here, or it feels rough, then you'll need to make some adjustments. So as there's a tiny little tick of play here, we need to tighten that cone down a fraction. So we're undoing the lock nut. We're tightening the cone very slightly to remove that play. And then we're locking it down again. Retest it. If it's spinning nice and smooth and there's no play, which there isn't now, then it's all adjusted and good to go. With the bearings reassembled, next what we can do is add a bit of extra grease. So if you remove the grease port grub screw, the 2mm Allen key, we can pump in a bit of extra grease. Easier to do it now than whilst you're trying to fit the bearings and put the axle in, because the grease can get in the way. Once you've done that, you do get a new grub screw with your service kit. So pop your fresh grub screw in there, just nip that up, it's only a tiny thread. And we're ready to fit our bearing shield. So you get the aluminium part and then the rubber O-ring. Just feed that inside of the channel, like so. That pops onto your axle, helps keep all the dirt out, and you get a fresh DMR end cap for the end of the pedal body. Get your logo nicely lined up and snap that into place. And that's it, you're done. Pedal serviced, obviously repeat for the other pedal, and you're ready to go and hit the trails. If you need any further information, you can hit us up via email at info@dmrbikes.com, or there's loads of extra information on the website, that's dmrbikes.com. Thanks very much for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Cheers!